everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers. Seekers of happiness and joy. Seekers of a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
All right, Melissa. Today, our episode is dedicated to Don Kielley.
Right. Don is a mentor of both of ours and has been battling cancer. And we just really want to talk about his impact in our lives, which got us to thinking about mentorship.
Yeah. So first, about Don, he has been my mentor for, 8-10 years I've known him, something like that, quite a while.
Yeah. And he's been my mentor for probably closer to 15.
Yeah.
For a really long time. And it was much more of an informal mentorship in my case for many years. And then it became a formal mentorship. And then it became an informal mentorship.
And then back to informal.
Yeah.
So for me, Don was my Vistage coach, right?
Yeah.
Like he was for you for a little while.
Yeah,
so that's the formal part, right?
Yeah, right.
That's us being involved in a professional organization.
Yeah.
Where Don's role was to actively coach and mentor us over a period of time.
Right. Over our business models and the people we worked with and to help inform us about how to make decisions in our business lives and in our personal lives.
And keeping us in check when we're acting like knuckleheads, either personally or business-wise.
I got in trouble a lot. You? How about you?
Yeah. So the thing that I really like about being mentored, especially with someone like Don who has about the best intent for us in the world.
I know. Yeah, he sure does.
Is that he was one of the few people in my life that could just basically call me out on stuff.
Right, same.
And it was never, it was always in a really well-intentioned way. And the way he positioned that stuff never felt like an attack or felt like a judgment.
I was going to use that word too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was simple observation and support.
Yep.
And you ought to be thinking about, like he has certain key phrases that he used and uses frequently. You ought to be thinking about. And I don't know the outcome of all this. Like he always just balanced out something very important with something very nonchalant. He just had a real gift in giving feedback.
For sure.
Yeah. And it got me thinking, there have been a number of mentors in my life that were informal mentors and formal mentors. And, I'm not actually even sure if I knew they were, some of them, I didn't even know they were mentors at the time.
Yeah. So what's an example of that? Who is someone that later you look back and said, oh, that was like a key mentor for me?
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a formal relationship.
Yeah. So I had a biology teacher in high school that was pretty gruff and pretty direct. And he was kind of intimidating to all of us. I mean, he was an old Army medic and he had a really funny sense of humor, but it was a bit cutting. So kids were scared of him. And I did a lot of work in the labs because I had extra hours in my day that I could do that as a senior. And so I worked in the labs with him. And despite how much time I spent with him, I didn't actually realize how much he was mentoring me. But one time I was being a real brat and there was a substitute teacher. And I was disrespectful when the teacher was there. And word got out that I had been like that. And I'm making it sound worse than it was. I maybe said one or two.
You were super bratty.
Yeah. I said like one or two sentences when I wasn't supposed to talk, right? And the guy called me out and said, I told you I wanted it to be quiet and now you're getting detention. And I was so deeply embarrassed by this. But of course I was acting cool because, in high school, that's just what you do. And Mr. Connors was his name. And he got wind that I had done that. And when we were back in the labs working, he made a comment about it. And it was one single comment. And then he walked away and ignored it. And I felt so bad. About 2 days later, I interrupted his class, knocked on his door, and I said, I just want to tell you how sorry I am. So there was something in how he treated me and what he believed about me that I didn't even believe about myself.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like he was really setting the tone for what his expectations were. And I never questioned what they were.
Yeah.
I always knew.
Yeah. There's a book called Leadership and Self-Deception, right? And they talk about what we've just been discussing is like there are people in our lives that can be fairly hard on us.
Yeah.
Right? That can give us bad news, that can call us out, that can hold us accountable when we don't want to be held accountable.
Right.
Right? But some people do that and they're just like, oh, you're wow, that person's mean, they're an a-hole, I'm going to write off what they say. And there's others that come with the same information or the same feedback.
Yeah.
And you take it in a completely different way.
Right.
Right? And I think that starts with that person's intention when they give you that feedback, right?
Yep.
And both our stories with Don and your high school teacher, their intention was set right.
Yeah, exactly right.
Giving feedback, right?
Yeah.
And it's a whole different relationship.
Yeah. And, in the world of business, we've been in the world of business for a number of years, and our roles have changed over time too. Like when you're a younger business person, it doesn't matter what your job is, you do have a natural tendency to want your boss or your manager to be your mentor also. That's a real natural conclusion that people go to, but that isn't actually always the case. And a lot of times we get very disappointed by that. And then you'll find many people as they go through their careers, they get into bigger roles, bigger leadership roles, and there aren't managers above them. So then they sort of feel stuck. Like, wait a minute, I don't have anyone in my company that is my mentor anymore. And it's super interesting when you pull back a little bit from what a traditional person that you would call a mentor, if you think of a manager or a boss, and realize, actually, in order for me to be resourced properly, there is a point in my life where now it's not unintentional mentoring. Now it's where I seek out mentors for specific things because I know that they're resourced in that area.
Yep.
And it becomes an intentional search, I think.
Yeah. When we talk about climbing the corporate ladder, I think you're right that you'll hear a lot of people that will really like their manager.
Right.
Will even leave, like if their manager switches jobs, switches companies, they'll go with.
I did that. Yeah.
They follow sort of their manager around, probably because they're probably getting a mentorship kind of relationship.
Right. Exactly.
But you're right. As you sometimes move up in an organization, that happens less and less to the point where you might be very lonely.
Right.
Like at the you say that it's lonely at the top, right?
Yeah.
Where there might not be that structure for you anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing to be thinking about.
The informal structure,
right?
At least.
Yeah, the formal one. I have a client that just was at an all-women's conference, and they had a speaker there that talked a lot, and this was coming from the perspective of women in business, but I think this perspective applies for every single one of us. And what this speaker was doing was she drew out a concept map. So she had one circle and that said me, and then there were several lines and different circles that were attached. And the speaker was saying that in every part of your life, you'll have a natural connection to someone that can offer you mentorship or growth or perspective or something like that. And it was really interesting how she did that. So there was family, there was learning, if you want to be learning something, there was your professional skill, but then there was also your influential skill. Like, how do you go to someone to learn how to help other people? And so those circles would change depending on what role you were in. But it was such a holistic approach. I thought it was just beautifully stated.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, it's like, besides my role as a coach and besides your role as a business owner, we are now mentoring others in different ways, whether we're aware of it or not.
Melissa and I are huge self-awareness nerds. We've been working on this stuff for a really long time, and we love talking about it and sharing it with all of you. We've actually brought all of the stuff we've made into an online course, and we think it's really great. The course starts by learning about yourself and how your mind-body connection works. It dives into your thoughts and feelings, and then helps you learn how to become your true, authentic self. Start your journey today. Head to theselfawarenessjourney.com to learn more and sign up. Yeah, that's the thing. So I had a mentor in my, I guess, like high school, college years. His name was Tom Ringdahl, and he ran the TV station that I volunteered at and that I worked at.
Oh, right? Yeah, you've talked about him.
Yep. And he was great. I mean, his view on life and was just really impactful for me. Even a lot of the philosophies that he held are actually reflected in the companies here.
Yeah.
But one thing that he said to me that was like really one of the most impactful things he said to me is that part of like our TV operations was like we'd go out and shoot like the football game or the concerts or whatever. And we'd have student volunteers who would like run all the equipment, right? So I was on staff. I would drive the TV truck to the high school. All the volunteers would show up. We'd do the shoot, right? And we'd go back and we'd air it later. And I don't remember exactly what was happening, but like, it's like, I don't know, the volunteer, like some dynamics of like one of the shoots was kind of weird. And he said one time, like, JJ, you have to remember that those kids are watching you all of the time, and your impact on them is way bigger than you expect.
Oh, right.
So I was probably doing something stupid. Yeah. And that really stuck with me, right? Yeah. This idea that informal influence is really powerful and bigger than you expect.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that I was sort of informally mentoring all of these kids that were volunteering at the TV station, right? And at the time, I was like 18 and they were like 15, right?
Right. You had vast experience compared to them.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. But that really always stuck with me is that be really mindful of your influence.
Right. I think so too. And I think that, you know, regardless of what kind of jobs we have, even if we are not outside jobs, if we have inside jobs in our homes and that sort of thing, and we're influencing people all the time. And I think that the value of mentorship for me is, first of all, there's nothing worse than someone who thinks that they're a, quote, mentor or a teacher. And really, it's just a platform for them to talk about what they know. Like, that is not mentorship.
Yeah.
Or if it's mentorship, it's not the kind of mentorship that's going to be sticky for anybody.
Yeah.
It actually creates the opposite.
Well, right. And that is ego driven.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. Like if you want to be a mentor because it
serves you,
like, it makes you feel smart. It makes you feel needed. That's kind of like the wrong intention.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've seen that time and time again. But I really think like to make a really good impact in mentoring, it's simply being more focused about, you know what, this is what I've experienced in my life. This is what I've done in these kinds of situations. And I don't know if that will work for you. But being able to just come alongside of someone, you know, and talk about your own experience, I think is so impactful for people. And I think too, like, I think it gets harder and harder as you get older, as you get more seasoned in whatever you're doing, depending on your roles at work. It gets harder and harder to find people that you want to get mentored by. I think it gets harder and harder. And I've also seen a lot of my coaching clients where I'll encourage them. It's like, hey, just because you have a coach doesn't mean you're getting all of your needs met. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to go out and find people that light you up And you can even find people that are maybe in your industry or maybe in your job or maybe are 10 years ahead of you and you look up to them greatly. Ask them if they'd be willing to sit down and have coffee with you. So many people get like that hero worshiper fear where they see somebody like, oh, that would be so amazing if I could meet him, you know, like, or her. One of the funniest things, I was such a John Maxwell fan, you know, 15 years ago. Yep. And I did this really funny thing, and I maybe told you about this, but I found a picture of him on stage, and I took a picture of myself, and I taped it.
For your vision board.
For my vision board. You remember that?
Yep.
And because I just loved his mentorship. I loved his love of people. It had nothing to do with any of his professional stigmas. I just loved how he was with people. There was something in the purity of how he would come alongside of people and show them love regardless of their circumstances or conditions in their lives. He treated everyone like they were special. And so I just loved him, and I thought, oh my gosh, I want to meet this guy. So I did this. I put this crazy thing on my vision board, and I just, all I could think about was how cool it would be if someday I could meet him. And lo and behold, I end up not only meeting him, but sitting on stage with him and getting to know him and know his admin person that was with him for years and years. And the feeling of reaching for a mentor that was a little scary for me, the feeling of actually being able to connect and have that mentorship was so powerful for me. And you know I don't mean this to sound egoish or anything, but what I needed in that mentorship, I've already received, and I no longer need it. You know, I appreciate what I got out of that. I guess what I'm just saying is I think mentoring and who we want to spend our time with changes all the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think about that. A lot. Like I have this like, I don't know. I need to come up with a better phrase for this. I have this like, I want to be the worst player on the tennis court view of the world, which just means I want to be around better players than I am all the time.
Yeah.
And even applying that to who I hang out with.
Yeah.
Right. The people I spend time with over the years has changed and morphed because I want to be hanging out or spending more time with people that are really challenging to my current thinking.
Yes.
Is to me, it's like a sort of like a way to level myself up all the time.
Yeah.
That sounds a little like judgmental, maybe of myself.
I don't think it does at all.
Or something, but
I don't think
that's
it
why I
sounds
was like,
that way.
I seek, I try to seek that all the time.
Yeah.
That'd be like a sort of a informal. I don't ask people to be my mentor in that way, but
right.
But like, just like, I'm observing other people that are, running businesses that are, maybe more sophisticated than mine or more efficient than, like, how are we doing that?
Right.
And seeking that stuff out is I think part of the journey.
I also think, like, you mentioned the word ego, and I think that's such an important part of this conversation. Like, you and I have mentored each other in different ways too, I think. Like, you were making fun of it last week. You're like, oh my gosh, now I'm turning into you. Like, I'm spending all this time coaching.
I was like slightly complaining about my week. Like, all I've been doing is sitting on coaching calls with my team.
But then, like, if you look at the reverse, like how much you've taught me patience, process and stuff like that. But neither one of us get too hung up in that, because even though we're friends and we're business partners, we don't have the ego invested that says, oh, we can't be also, like, we don't use words like mentorship, or we don't use words like we're teaching each other, but we are, and we don't have problems talking like that. At least I don't. And I think that's the thing. I think there's so many people right in front of us and right in our lives that can be teaching us things all the time. And it is just an interesting thing to think about it as a mentorship, and a season. Everything has a season.
Yep. So part of this conversation is actually presupposing that people actually like want mentorship. Like you and I we're talking, like, I'm just sharing how I'm like actively seeking it out. But I've seen people who don't want to be mentored, who are like aren't maybe thinking that way, or aren't
in the growth mode,
or don't see it as an option. right? Or aren't seeing the mentors that might be around them.
Yeah.
Like, what advice do you have for someone who maybe is like listening to the pod and it's like, oh, actually, what they're talking about, their relationships with mentors, does sound good.
Yeah.
How would someone even start sort of finding an informal or a formal mentor to help them either business or personally?
I think that's such a good question. For me, I would immediately say, what are you longing for? In your heart, what are you longing for? If you are a parent that is having a hard time with a child or your children, there is a feeling in there like, I just want to be doing a good enough job. Am I doing a good enough job? These are the normal questions we ask ourselves. And in that case, there's a place for mentorship. Do I know any parents that are a few years ahead of me who have already gone through this, who have gone through the same thing our family is going through? Is there a place where I can find a parent that can offer support?
Yeah.
Not the answers. This isn't always about the answers. Mentorship is really about somebody who's going to ask you good questions. If you're longing for a different career, why? Why are you longing for that? And if you want to be in a different career, what kind of career do you want to be in? Oh, there's another way you can start looking. Who are people in your circle that are in that kind of role or that career or whatever? And have courage to just say, would you be willing to meet with me for coffee? Would you be willing to have a Zoom call with me? Would you be willing just to talk to me because you're someone that I think of highly? I had a woman reach out to me. She's a coach. She's got a podcast. She's just fantastic. It's super into growth, and I just love her. And she said to me, "You're one of my bluebirds." And I said, "I don't know what that means." And she said, "You're somebody that I feel a little afraid to connect with, and I just see you." Like, she was trying to describe to me that she saw me in this light bigger than her. And I was so flummoxed by that. I was like, what are you even talking about? But that took her courage to say that to me. And here I was completely like blown away and so honored that she said that to me. And most of the time, when you think about calling somebody and asking them to just spend 45 minutes or an hour with you, they are so honored by that. You know, when someone asks you, boy, you really seem to be good at this. It would be so awesome if I could just hear your story. Yeah. That blows people away, and people love to help people, you know?
Oh, for sure.
So there's a lot of ways, and I think it really begins with longing. What are you longing for?
Yeah. I'm going to have to think about that.
Maybe with the whole tennis thing, you can just say, I don't want to be the worst player. Maybe you want to start saying, I want to be the second worst player.
I had a whole conversation about that last week. So back to Don.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really appreciated about the relationship with Don and is that during sort of my formal mentorship years with him, there was a lot going on. Like, I got I bought out my business partner.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We had a company that was like in financial, like, not trouble, but just chaos.
Yeah. That's a good word. JJ's covering his face right now.
Right, yeah, it was kind of a mess. Like, it was just confusion everywhere.
Yeah.
But even though like I was like really naive about a lot of things, I was making dumb mistakes. I was like making fairly obvious mistakes right. He never made me feel dumb, right?
Yeah.
He always, like, the way he made me feel, even though he absolutely, like, he would have every right to say, like, JJ, you are such a dumbass. Can you just get it together, right? But he never did that. He said, well, let's think about this. Let's think about that. Broke things down. Right. Calmed everything down.
Right.
Right. And that's the thing that I will always remember about that relationship, is like how he always made me feel.
Yeah, yeah. And Don has retired from that role, which is why we're talking about it in past tense, and has been really trying to take care of his health, and it's been a tough year for him. But yeah, he's kind of gone informal. But you're right, even in the informality of the relationship, he's still ever present, right? Like, even he was in a hospital down in Houston having a stem cell transplant, And I called to check on how he was, and he was like, "Well, what's going on with JJ? What are you guys doing? Well, what have you released? Are you having fun? Well, are you taking care of your other businesses?" Like, he's just always like he's firing 100 questions. It's like, Don, you are in a hospital bed having a stem cell transplant. Yeah. Can we please talk about you?
Yeah, we're trying to see how you're doing, not like 20 questions about how we're doing.
I know it. So anyway, I just hope this conversation has helped people just sort of think about mentorship and how they're mentoring people in their lives.
Yeah.
And could you be more intentional about that? There's huge benefit. You have something to offer. You are your unique person. Every single person has something to offer in terms of helping someone else.
Yeah, and I like how you said that, like, if you're longing for something, kind of seek someone out who's had that experience.
Yeah.
I would say, like, on the other side too, like, be observant of the people who are around you.
Yeah.
Because you could also be their informal mentor, and they might, like, just being a little bit observant.
Yeah.
You might be able to recognize that and really help somebody.
Absolutely. Yep. Great conversation.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.